day is through. No time to wallow in the mire. Try now, we can only lose, and our love become a funeral pyre.
That was Robbie Krieger and the Doors with Light My Fire, coming in at number 45 on Guitar World Magazine's Top 100 Solos of All Time. There are some solos on this list that have interesting stories behind them, while others, well, they don't. I have to look elsewhere for something to talk about, something about maybe the guitar player or the band in general or the song in general. This song has lots of great stories, and I'm going to pass a few on to you. The song was written by Robbie Krieger in 1966, shortly after he joined the Doors, because as a result of Jim Morrison complaining that he was doing the bulk of the songwriting. So Robbie Krieger pitched in and wrote this song and stuck a 2.5-minute beautiful melodic guitar solo smack dab right in the middle of this song. They released it on their eponymous debut album in 1967. I think it was eponymous. I don't know who I'm looking for. There's nobody else here. I think it was just called The Doors, their first album. Anyway, the song, the record company knew that they had a hit on their hands, and but they had a problem because the song was 7 minutes long, and they were going to have to trim that down to about 3 minutes before they'd get any radio play, because back in 1967 they didn't play 7-minute long songs on the radio. So two things had to go. Ray Manzarek's organ solo had to go, and Robbie Krieger's guitar solo had to go. And poor Robbie Krieger, he put so much work probably into this solo, and only to have it ripped out of the song for the next 20 or 30 years, on radio at least. Not many people, unless you owned the first Doors album, not many people until the advent of classic rock radio in the 80s. Did anyone actually hear the full-length version of this song with its complete guitar solo? This is a great classic melodic guitar solo. It's not technically difficult, but it's just beautifully constructed. I personally would give this 3/4 of a masterpiece of melodic guitar soloing, which is amazing considering that Robbie Krieger only started playing electric guitar a year or two before he joined the Doors. He was a flamenco guitar player, and it was only a year and a half, 2 years that he had jumped to the electric guitar before he joined the Doors. And as a result, he never used a pick. He always he finger picked with long fingernails as part of his flamenco tradition, I suppose, which gave him a really unique sound. He had this real sitar quality to his soloing, and it was never really emulated at the time, and it really hasn't been emulated by anybody else since. I think maybe George Harrison doodled around with something similar, but it was really a style unto his own. And this solo, just a gorgeous melodic solo, and I say it's 3/4 of a masterpiece solo. Even Robbie Krieger himself wasn't 100% happy with this solo, and I'm going to hazard to guess why. Because at about the 3/4 mark of this solo, it's 2.5 minutes, so about the 2-minute mark, I think he kind of runs out of ideas, and he only had a couple of takes to put this one down. And he goes back to the original lick that he opened the solo with and starts kind of noodling. And it's kind of off time, and it's kind of like meandering around that theme that he opened the solo with. But it's very strange, and it's quite off time, and it was really difficult to learn, like note for note, as I tried to learn this solo, because it kind of loses the melody at this point in the solo, and so I really had to go over it and over it and over it to try and find the melody. And I may be wrong about this. If he structured that part of the solo and composed it, then good on him, because it's very strange. But personally, I think he was kind of just like noodling, and the solo itself kind of lost some structure and it lost some melody at that point of the solo. But he gains it back with some really great, double stops to finish up the solo. Overall, just a tremendous solo by Robbie Krieger, and well deserving of its spot on this list. Personally, I might knock it back a few pegs because of my opinion on that portion near the end of the solo. It could have been maybe a little bit shorter than 2.5 minutes, and it might have been a little stronger structurally, I think. A couple of other interesting points about this song. When in 1968 they were asked to perform on the Ed Sullivan Show, and the producers and Ed Sullivan told Jim Morrison that he could not use the line "Girl, we couldn't get much higher" because of its drug connotation, I suppose. So they said, "You're going to have to change the line to 'Girl, we couldn't get much better.'" And Jim Morrison said, "Sure, I'll change the line to 'Girl, we couldn't get much better.'" And so they did the performance, and when the time came for him to sing "Girl, we couldn't get much higher," he sang "Girl, we couldn't get much higher." And the producers and Ed Sullivan were furious with Jim Morrison. Ed Sullivan always shook the hand of his performers after they left the stage, and he refused to shake Jim Morrison's hand, and told Jim Morrison that he would never perform on the Ed Sullivan Show again. And Jim Morrison said, "Man, we just played the Ed Sullivan Show," in classic Jim Morrison fashion. So that was pretty cool. So another thing about this song is Jim in 1968 or 9 was still in London after a tour, and the rest of the band had come back to California. And Buick had contacted the band to ask about using the song for a Buick commercial. And the band agreed without telling Jim that Buick could use the song for their commercial. And when Jim got back and found out about it, he called Buick and said, "If you use my song," I should backtrack a little bit. The band had every member of the band had veto power about all things in the band, so he had the right to say no. And so when he got back and found out, he called Buick and said, "If you put that song in a fucking car commercial, I'm going to take a sledgehammer to a brand new Buick on national TV." And that was the end of the car commercial for Buick, so it never did air. And Jim Morrison won out that day. So another interesting little tidbit about this one. Anyway, just a great solo. It's in Dorian, which is kind of nice. Not a whole lot of solos use the Dorian mode so far on this list. Dorian is a mode of the major scale for soloing in a minor scale. He kind of bounces back and forth between Dorian and Aeolian, the natural minor scale, in this one. And it was kind of nice to do a little bit of noodling in Dorian. I don't often use the Dorian scale personally. It's very much a jazz blues scale. Not always, but it's usually used in jazz and blues. I doubled up a couple of lines, a couple of the double stops, and a few this where he's up high in the neck. I doubled those up because I think he doubled them up as well. So I kind of just tried to emulate what he did in the studio. What else? I think that's it. Anyway, just a lovely solo, and really long. A lot to remember. Not so technically difficult, but just a lot to remember. And that noodly bit, really difficult to nail the timing on that. I had to go over it and over it and over it before I could get it down. And but I got it down. I think I got it note for note. And I'm going to do a tutorial for this one because there are no tutorials on YouTube for this one. So I'm going to sit down maybe tomorrow or the next day, put together a tutorial for this one. Coming up next, we have Alive and Mike McCready of Pearl Jam. And I'm really looking forward to digging into that one because I love his playing, and I'm a huge Pearl Jam fan. So I'm going to shut the camera off right now, and I'm going to start learning that one. So I hope you like that one. And next week we'll have some Pearl Jam. So you take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon.